We're going to call this meeting to order.
Really?
Oh, see my watch, it says 1:31. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none. I need an adoption of, I'd like to actually make an announcement that Shane Baker is, sorry.
Way to start.
Sean Baker is not his name, that's my first announcement. It is Shane Baker is our new CAO, and this is his first meeting. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
And Tracy, Director Roman, would you like to make an announcement?
Thank you. So I did want to make an announcement. I have another new staff member to introduce. So as you know, Laura Tegelberg, now Laura Ray, has moved on to a new portfolio. So we have the privilege of welcoming Eric Berkelmans to our team as our new volunteer coordinator, and he has a very extensive resume. He comes to us from Crohn's and Colitis Canada, where he was the manager of volunteer engagement. He also served as the national manager for CNIB, and as well the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada, and an organization we are all very familiar with, TO 2015, the Pan Am Games. He played an integral role in the volunteer recruitment for that initiative as well. He's also got a very strong recreational background, including working with Boys and Girls Club, a skate and hockey instructor with the City of Toronto, and also a facility supervisor in the City of London. So he's a great blend of recreation and volunteer management experience. So we wanted to welcome Eric to our team and introduce him to council.
The good news is you don't have to stay. Unless you want, you're more than welcome. Okay, I need a motion to adopt the regular minutes of July the 9th. All in favor? And I need a motion to adopt the closed session minutes.
Move it.
All in favor? Thank you. We have 4-5 pulled, 4-6 pulled, 4-17 pulled. Anything else pulled? Without proper notification? Okay. I need a motion to
Move the balance.
Thank you. All in favor? Okay, so 4-5 has been pulled by Pat Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious why the resident type 1 and 2 fields has doubled in price, recommended price for 2019.
Sorry, this is for,
The operations and fees, field fees for 2019. It's page 4. Yes, page 43.
40. Well, it starts on
On
40.
page 43.
Okay.
the fees for our sports fields has not changed. They remain the same.
And this one has increased to $400 from $200.
Page 44.
We're 40%.
Third up from the bottom.
Okay, so the fields, as you'll see, so the previous fee was $200 per day.
Yeah.
It's now it's $400 from Friday at 4 p.m. to Sunday at 4 p.m. So it's essentially 3 days as opposed to individual days. So there is actually a reduction, and that's really in response to our discussions with our user groups to reduce some of our tournament fees that were introduced last year. So
That's not quite clear there.
So, yeah.
But that's okay, that's good. I thought to myself, why is it increasing double? Okay, thank you.
Regional Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Mr. Meredith, I had a question regarding the, I was in touch with you, let me just find the email, with regarding to Ajax Spartans baseball back a couple months ago, and you sent me the fee structure, and their complaint is that they feel that, well, we know that Ajax soccer has already moved over to Pickering, and they're suggesting that they may consider doing the same thing. And looking at the fee structure, there is still a fair discrepancy between us and our neighbors. If you're looking, just our immediate neighbors in Whitby and Pickering. In Pickering, they're about 26% less than us on the youth, And in Whitby, they're 82% less than us for the same type Class 1 field. Can you speak to that, please? Because to me, I don't know what we receive in revenue for youth sports, but I think this is an investment rather than a fee, and I think that's an investment we should probably look at making. So since there is a large discrepancy, what can we do about that?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, with respect to our fees as it relates to youth, both baseball and soccer, is we've held our fees since 2014 prior to the Pan Am Games. So there has been no increase for, this will be going into our 5th year. As you know, in terms of our discussion and dialogue with our neighbors, we know that both Pickering and Whitby are continuing to increase their fees annually, and I would suggest in time will be more in alignment with the town of Ajax. So as it relates to trends, back in the early 2000s, council had provided direction to staff to work towards a 100% recovery fee for our sports fields for adults and 75% for youth. Right now, we're probably about and I'm estimating without details, but probably about a 30 to 35% recovery rate in terms of our operational costs for our sports fields, well below the 75% target that council had previously.
Say that again, we're currently at 35%,
You know,
not
I
70%?
could verify sort of what the actual percentage is. It's substantially less than 50%. And my guess would be in the range of 30 to 35% of our recovery costs as it relates to the operations to maintain our sports fields. Whereas
And that's for both adult and youth?
That's correct.
Okay.
So what had happened is when we made a significant investment of multi-millions of dollars when we built the Pan Am sports fields, there was also the recognition that there's added maintenance costs associated with that and added staff. So when we do look at sort of the costs being charged to our user fees, I think there's a couple of things. One of them relates to the quality of fields that they're also playing on. I think I would gladly compare sort of the fields and the quality that are provided in Ajax versus Pickering and Whitby. So I think from the direction that council's provided, the fact that we have retained our fees since 2014 at their current rates, plus on an annual basis, we do have ongoing dialogue with our user groups. So throughout the year, in September, in January, we were meeting with our user groups, we were discussing user fees, and we're dealing with the executive of those fees, of those sports. And there is no issue that gets raised with respect to the executives who are representing each of the user groups when we have our annual meetings.
Okay, when was the last annual meeting with baseball?
It would have been typically in the fall, generally in the October timeframe, once the season ends. We then shortly thereafter have meetings with them on planning and permitting and talking about a variety of issues heading into the following season.
Okay, and I agree, we have very superior product here in Ajax, but a type 1, type 2, is that universal? So if we look at a type 1 here, wouldn't that be the same as a type 1 in Pickering?
Not necessarily. It
No?
depends.
Okay.
Type 1, as we define it, relates to the fact that they're all tile drained, they're all irrigated, and they all have lights. Quite often what you'll have in some of the municipalities, such as Pickering and Whitby, they'll have an additional electrical charge for the use of lights. Ours is all incorporated within our hourly fee. So as it relates to sort of the type 1 field, that's in terms of the charge itself. Type 1 also defines the level of service that gets provided. So whereas we're cutting and maintaining type 1 fields upwards of 4 to 5 times per week, where type 1 and type 2 has an annual cut cycle and receives different levels of service with respect to fertilization, top dressing, overseeding, aerating. So all of those elements that go into maintaining a field are built into the day-to-day operations based on the type of field that they are.
Okay, what are we doing with our soccer facilities now? With Ajax soccer moving?
We're continuing to have dialogue with our soccer clubs as it relates to the future needs and the future use of our user group. So those dialogues are ongoing, and as we go through our budgeting process for 2018, those dialogues continue. But we are aware that there has been a transition from some of the competitive teams to Pickering, not necessarily the house league program, it's more competitive. And I can say that it's not attributed to fees, that there are organizational issues between the two user groups that are creating some of that change that's currently taking place.
Not politics. All right, thank you, Chair.
And Pat, you moved it?
Yes.
All in favor? Thank you. 4-6, I pulled it. I tried to look through your report. I didn't see when this project for Roslyn was going to be happening, the widening. Do we have a date on that, or are we hoping, I kind of thought we were hoping the region would take over Roslyn and they could do it.
That's not happening.
Oh,
No,
maybe
okay,
you can take the color.
so when is it going to happen?
So I'll answer it a couple of ways. There are currently discussions that are ongoing with the region as it relates to the transfer of Roslyn Road and Weston Road south of Bailey Street. I believe the region is having a report presented to regional council at some point in time this month in terms of providing an update. What we have included in our budget was for 2018 initiating the detailed design, which this report awarded during the summer months. Our expectation is that we will complete the detailed design between Church Street and Westy Road by the midpoint of 2019. We're currently doing our long-range capital forecast in our 2019 capital budget. We will be incorporating within the draft portion of the capital budget the timing for Roslyn Road between Church Street and Wesley Road to begin in 2020. So what we do know is the region is planning on doing a lot of the water main work in 2019. So our plan is to coordinate the timing for the construction of and the widening of Roslyn Road between Church and Wesley beginning in 2020, being completed 2021. So that it is in coordination with.
So we're only digging it up once.
We're doing it all, and then
Yeah.
what we want to do is obviously continue on, so it seems continuous as one project. We're also intending in 2019 to initiate the environmental assessment for Roslyn Road from Wesley Road to the easterly limit being Durham 23. So the intent would be to work with the region on completing the EA for the balance of Roslyn Road, and at the same time have the discussions with them, which we'll be doing sort of over the next few months as far as the timing and triggers based on milestones when we would look to transfer Roslyn Road to the region.
So, okay, thank you. So something I'm really excited about was the signalization at Pearson Roslyn, because that's been asked of our residents now for 8 years.
Yep.
So it's very cool that it's in there. How do we ensure it stays? Because I believe that we had signalization on the last portion of Roslyn, and suddenly we don't have it anymore. So I want to make sure we have, that stays in this particular design, because it's, like I said, it's been something that's been asked of for at least 8 years, because there's a bus stop on the opposite side of the road that no one can get to because of all the traffic. So that's one thing. The other thing that concerns me about 2020 is that, are we not looking to do the bridge on Church Street north to take the dip out of the road in 2020? And how much can we reasonably expect residents to be patient about in that area?
Right now, in the long-range capital forecast, the construction of Church Street north of Roslyn Road is scheduled to begin in 2019. And be
So
completed
just as bad, really, because 2019, then into 2020, there's a house on that corner that will explode, right? You know the one I mean?
Yes.
Yes.
So we have two projects being Church Street and Roslyn that, subject to the capital budget being approved in terms of the coordination of timing and construction, there's a lot of details that will need to be worked out. I can't provide you all the details and the logistics
I realize
because we're
that.
not there at that point in time, but we are aware that we're going north from Roslyn and we're going east from Church Street. So how that happens and how that transitions to minimize the impact to local and regional residents is something that we will obviously pay close attention to, so that we are coordinating things to minimize that disruption.
Okay, I don't know how we do that, but, so, Mayor Parrish.
Thank you. Just on the road rationalization, the transfer of Roslyn to the region, just a couple of questions. Will the design for Roslyn across Ajax be stipulated in the agreement in terms of the standards that we've already set with respect to the section from the western boundary through to east of Church Street? And the second question is, how do we know, and based on what I would say the region's less than stellar record, how do we know that that road would be widened to what I take would be basically a 5-lane profile, 2 in each direction and turning facilities, in any kind of reasonable time frame? And can we get guarantees of that in the transfer agreement with the region that would be enforceable and that we could rely on? Because otherwise, I question whether or not we should do any transfer to the region until we've got the road up and running. Roslyn's now seriously over capacity at rush hour, especially. And even during non-rush hour points of the day, the volumes are significant. And we can't wait for the region for a decade to get that road the way it should be. So, it's, you know, long-term, it is a regional road and should be treated as such and needs to be incorporated as a regional road. But if this is just going to delay, you know, the systematic build out of that, and we probably have some ideas as to what we would have the capacity to do in our long-range capital budget in terms of widening it across. And if the region can't match that, I don't see the point. Can you just respond to those two items?
A couple of things. First of all, with respect to the design standards that we've already initiated west of Church Street. The detailed design that we're completing right now from Church Street to Wesley Road matches the current design that was indicated in the EA and was constructed west of Church Street. So we will have the 4 lanes, turning lanes, on-road cycling lanes, off-road multi-use trail, and sidewalks. So all those elements will continue in the detailed design to Wesley Road and will be tendered by the town of Ajax to meet that standard. So it would be built to the same standard to Wesley Road. I would then say, understanding that the EA process, we would look to lead, being the town of Ajax, beginning in 2019, would, I assume, look to match that standard through the EA that would take it all the way to Lake Ridge Road. So I think regarding the timing for transfer, you want to have the EA and the conceptual design reflected to meet the town of Ajax objectives before any actual land transfer would take place. So I think first of all, we need to embed that design in the EA before any road transfer would take place. With respect to timing and funding, it is a good question. We will obviously have further discussions with our finance staff, the region, and their finance staff, because it is obviously a significant dollar amount that on its own, whether the town would be able to afford it based on our DC collections over the next 5 to 10 years is questionable. So in order to ultimately get the design that we want, is part of it is getting the region on board, getting them to commit to a timing and a contribution towards the construction or the completion of Roslyn Road east of Wesley Road. So I think those are key discussions that before any agreement is in place, that there needs to be as ironclad as we can, recognizing that we don't control regional budgets, the commitment being made in terms of when those transfers and whether it could take place.
I think what you're saying is if the region takes it over, it goes down on the bottom of the list. And
Well, we know the record on Westy.
yeah. Oh,
We know the record on certain other things. We know they're never on schedule, they're never on time. And I take Mr. Meredith's point, the build-out of Roslyn right across is an expensive proposition. It can't be done in one iteration. It's going to take several, Church to Westney phases to get it done. We have some significant development coming on the north side of Westney between Salem and Audley of significant density. There might be opportunities for front-ending agreements, I don't know. But I wouldn't want to go through a transfer situation where we knew with a high degree of certainty that we could get this thing done in 6 years, and every indication was that the region would get it done in 12 years. That's not, the math doesn't work for me on that. So, and I don't know whether you can get anything in a contractual arrangement to bind the region, because just like us, they have their 5-year forecast. It goes in, and you don't know whether it's going to be funded until they pass their actual annual budget, because we've all seen it, those of us who serve at the region, matters that were in the long-range capital for 2016 slip out to 17, 18, 19, et cetera. So I think it's an issue.
And part of it does work sort of both ways, because we also recognize that Wesley Road requires some investment in dollars south of Bailey Street as well. So whereas the region has some of that money currently identified within their long-range capital forecast in year around 2021, I believe, in terms of doing some of those improvements, it's sort of getting a commitment from the town, similar town, from what we'd be asking of the region as far as the timing of those works to ensure that they get completed as well.
Yep.
All in favor? Thank you. Next is 417 by Regional Councillor Jordan.
201.
Oh, the community safety strategy. I see that we've done a lot of work over the last 4 years, and you've provided a lot of information. My question is, it basically says in the conclusion that we're going to continue with the partnerships. Are we going to enhance any programs, or what's the goal going forward? Because we need to do more, and I think of some of the things like the hubs and all the things that certainly I've been very supportive of, the affordable recreation policies, et cetera, et cetera.
So maybe I'll sort of speak out a little and Kayla can weigh in. So we have a couple of things that are sort of looming in the horizon. So Bill 175, Safer Ontario's Act, is really going to some degree, dictate what will be the expectations of municipalities. Ajax is in a good place because we're far ahead of the curve in terms of most lower tier municipalities, having what is now almost 11 years of community safety strategy work under our belts. We've also had the opportunity to embed some of these pieces in our other processes. So Impact Ajax, for example, there's an ability to leverage funds around community safety. We plan to go to senior management and have a conversation about how we move forward with the strategy, how we elevate and sort of launch off the results we already have, bearing in mind what changes may come down the pipe with the legislation. Until we know the final results of that, we may have to tweak a little bit. We definitely have commitment from our partners as well. There's a great number of really key community partners around the table that are equally committed to continuing to move this forward from a partnership-based perspective, which I think is a great position for us to be in. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, through the chair. So we have a very cohesive collective of community partners that I think it's taken those 11 years to really build that momentum and the trust with our partners. As you'll see in the last couple of years, we've actually expanded our partnerships and invited more members to the table to be responsive and reactive to what's going on in the Ajax community. So even outside of our local municipal partners, as well as our regional ones that sit at the table, we are now also connected to Ontario partners, so through provincial networks, so that we're constantly in communication with folks that are in the same position as myself, looking at community safety and well-being strategies. And we have now been accepted as a part of the Canadian Municipal Network on Crime Prevention. So not only are we looking municipally and provincially, but we're hearing across Canada what types of evidence-based strategies and empirical studies are coming forward to make sure that our trends are fitting. And we can also reach out to those partners to ask what has been their best practices locally when they're dealing with some of the same concerns and issues we may have here.
Which is important because it does take a comprehensive approach, no question. What I hear that the and it may not be for you to answer, it might be for the representatives from Durham Region Police Services. I hear that there's a situational table, I don't know if that's the correct word, in Oshawa. Do we have one here? Or do you want to leave that question until you
I'm happy
I'll
to
defer
answer that
to
question.
Inspector
For that to Inspector Haskins.
Okay,
I'm not sure
okay.
it's accurate.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of information here as well. I wanted to ask, firstly, about our waterfront is becoming an issue where we've had situations happen over the last few years and certainly just very recently. What are we doing on that front?
Through the chair, sorry, in terms of boater safety?
Well, just the whole, you know, like rescue and so on. I know that Peru came in front of us for funding and that kind of went.
So we did have conversations with Para around helping them around education, outreach, capacity development. The ask that Para had at the time for us was capital for repair and equipment of their boats, which isn't eligible under the Impact Ajax stream. But we did speak to them about other initiatives, whether that was information fairs or volunteer recruitment, that sort of thing. Certainly are always happy to have those conversations again with Para around those pieces. Currently, we couldn't fund the capital pieces, however. And otherwise, I think, through our aquatics program, our Swim to Survive program that we have in all of the schools in Durham, certainly looking to embed that water safety piece from an aquatics perspective. Other than that would be, I think, sort of where we have focused our efforts is around personal safety in terms of safety swimmers and boaters, and any conversations we've had with Para.
Of course, they used to teach it in school, swimming.
Yeah, so they do come. So we actually partner with the school boards, and they actually come. It's called Swim to Survive.
And as well, I'd like the Para request to come back because I know next year, if I'm here, I want to see that again because they've been involved in a couple of our rescues down here. And I think our waterfront is an important piece. We encourage people to use it, encourage people to get out in the water and so on, and yet we're not providing the support that, in my opinion, should be provided to an organization that performs, a volunteer organization that performs rescues. I want to come back so that we can look at that next time around. The other one I wanted to ask about the Me Too forum. Can you elaborate a little on that?
I think Tracy wanted to say something just with regards to the last point, is that right?
Sorry, yes, so thank you, through the chair. So in terms of Para, if there is something outside of the scope of Impact Ajax that we're looking for support for Para, then what I would suggest is there's an opportunity to talk about that within an operational budget perspective as opposed to an Impact Ajax perspective, just because we know it doesn't fit the criteria for Impact Ajax. So certainly, under the auspices of community safety strategy, if that's something that you want to have a chat with us, information, we're happy to discuss that. But I would want to keep it outside of the Impact Ajax fund.
And that's fine. I know criteria are meant for
Yeah.
certain things, but sometimes I think you have to find a way around the barriers because this organization has been out there on our waterfront and they've been helping with rescues. So I just don't want it to get lost in that detail of criteria that they don't meet. We wouldn't have gotten Bomb Girls Monument if the criteria hadn't been changed. So there's a good example for you.
So the next question was about Me Too?
Yes.
Yeah, through the chair. So we are launching our second installment of the In Conversation with Speaker series. The topic is Me Too, Power, Privilege, and Consent. So that's going to be on Tuesday, September 25th. I'll be receiving the invitation today, actually. So we are looking again to bring that conversation more locally. So we have 5 speakers set up. We have 2 academic speakers speaking about the movement from a global perspective, what that looks like internationally, As well, we have one that's coming locally to talk about feminist digital identities. So again, really talking about
Feminist.
digital identities. So that's
Digital.
digital, yeah. So that social media component of how the actual movement started and how it moved forward, as well as some intersectionalities that go underneath it. So really exploring those pieces. We have someone coming from Durham Men Take Action to speak about the male perspective. We also have someone from our Violence Prevention Coordinating Committee coming to speak about some of the activities locally. And then we also have a representative potentially from DRPS coming to speak about what domestic violence looks like locally as well. So that will be moderated by our Executive Director at Buzzing, Yvette. She's going to be coming and having that discussion with us.
I'm pleased that we're involved in doing this. It's an issue that, in my mind, has not been addressed adequately, and I don't mean right here, just all across North America, all around the world, I guess. And we know it's happening. I've looked at the stats on assault, and it's close to 50% intimate partner violence. Maybe there's a crime analyst at the back can verify, but it's a lot higher than people think. And a number of those incidents go unreported. So it's a serious issue in our community, and I mean, not just ours, many other communities. And we saw it firsthand in the summer when we had a woman and two children. And I think we know it all too well.
Would you like to move?
Yes.
All in favor? Thank you. Okay, we're down to 5.1. Mayor Parrish?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I circulated an email to members of council. It's my understanding that in November of 2016, we adopted a naming policy for parks and buildings in the town. It's my understanding that there's two-way nominations can come forward. One is community-initiated nominations, and the other is town-initiated nominations. And then there's criteria for them. Among the criteria is a name that recognizes an historical event that has town-wide impact or cultural significance, and commemoration of an individual who has shown exceptional character or courage, and an individual or organization that has made a significant community contribution in terms of diversity, culture, etc. In any event, the name that I want to put forward is Kim Fook. That name might be identifiable to many of you, but she was the 9-year-old girl who was captured in the Pulitzer-winning photograph from the Vietnam War in I think approximately 1972. And in today's parlance, that picture went viral all over the world and had a significant impact in ending the Vietnam War. And at the end of the Vietnam War, as you would know, that the town of Ajax received a number of refugees from Vietnam who were fleeing a chaotic situation there, and through church groups and other groups, a number of Vietnamese refugees ended up here. Kim Fook was not among those refugees. She came later, but she has been a long-time resident of the town of Ajax. She's very active in charitable and humanitarian work and has a foundation in her name that supports those activities. And I felt that it's a significant global event, really, with local implications that would be an appropriate name for a park. I brought it here today to see whether there is consensus or agreement from council, and if so, I'd like to put it forward as a town-initiated nomination so that it could then proceed in the normal course and be dealt with appropriately. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that arise from that.
Great idea.
I'm so sorry. Any questions at all?
So I will so move, Madam
That's an
Chair.
easy one.
All in favor? Thank you. I'm sorry, Councillor Dyes, I missed you on the speakers list. Did you want to bring something up in an already moved motion? Sorry.
It was what Colleen was talking about earlier. We had the report up on the safety strategy, and just wanted to congratulate the staff and all the partners involved, the school boards. I mean, the list is incredibly long, during police services. And I can remember, you know, going through when we looked at smaller neighborhoods within our wards and how different the neighborhoods were and how there was a real lack of communication and some education there, or increased kind of communication we needed to do. And this really went far, far beyond what we ever thought we could do for our neighborhoods. Just connecting people through the neighborhood watch. It's the number of neighborhood watches that have sprung up are incredible. So these have connected people in communities that don't really see each other because they work in the city, and so they have a fear of crime in their neighborhood. And so I think you've done an incredible job, and I do hope you can keep on with that work. So thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to thank Kaylee Silva and Sarah Moore, who couldn't be here today as the co-chairs. They've done a lot of hard work and very passionate and enthusiastic about the issues, as are the other town staff on the committee. So thank you very much. I will make sure that they
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry about that. Now we have our update from our Durham Regional Police Services, the rock star Jack Laskin.
You're raising expectations. Let me speak first.
Yes, I am.
You made me speechless.
I use a PowerPoint to present because there is quite a bit of rich content that I want to share with you about provide you with a community safety update. So it has been quite some time since we've come to this table or been at council to provide you with an update on the ongoing safety of our community, specifically in Ajax. So we have tailor-made a presentation that speaks specifically to events that have happened in Ajax that shape the perception of community safety, which has already been referred to at the table, but also give you an update on really how safe of a community we are as involved with all the different partnerships that have been mentioned already, and we're going to highlight a few of those in this presentation. So, for the purposes of this presentation and overview, we've identified three themes: violent crime, roadway safety, and property crime are the primary focus of this presentation. But at any point in time, if you want to interrupt me or ask a specific question about something that you see on the slide, I'm happy to focus in a little deeper on some of the information that's on these in this presentation. So for the first time in many years, we're starting to see an uptick in reported property and violent crime. Over the past year, violent crimes went up about 7.4%. Property crimes have increased about 2.3%. And other criminal crimes have gone up about 5.8%. That's a regional snapshot. That's probably the only regional snapshot that I'm going to offer you. The rest will all be specific to the town of Ajax. We're not sure if this is a trend yet, but we're seeing similar increases in some other jurisdictions, and I mean some other jurisdictions in Ontario. Why is crime increasing? From our own deduction, our population is growing, and in terms of reported crime, we made it a lot easier to report crime online, which can be a contributing factor. But we're keeping an eye on things and making the appropriate operational adjustments based on the trends that we're starting to see. When we compare ourselves to other similar-sized police services, we rank very favorably in the terms of crime and clearance rates. But to be successful, we work with many community partners. Our commitment to the Ajax Community Safety Strategy is working well, and we continue to build on the already strong partnerships in some key areas of need in our community. And the Durham Connect table was one of the things that was brought up about the situation table that we have that operates out of Oshawa, but it does serve the entire region. This is a hot topic, violent crime, and I'm happy to share with you that about 2 hours ago, we arrested the second subject that was involved in the shooting on Irish Court last week. So, and our investigative team are on their way to Guelph to take that person into custody and do a few search warrants in relation to the location where this subject was arrested on this past weekend. And this is not in this presentation, which is why I thought I would mention it now. We arrested the first subject, so 2 people are under arrest for that crime that happened last week, which I think is a tribute really to our investigative teams, because they have really been working around the clock on some of the serious incidents that have occurred in the last few months. So, and you'll see some of these are newspaper articles. There are a number of recent events that have caused our residents to potentially shift their overall perception of safety in our community. You will recall that last fall there were a number of carjackings in Ajax. This was obviously a priority investigation, and on December 5th, 2017, we arrested 2 brothers for these crimes. In January 2017, there was a violent home invasion robbery in Ajax, and an 8-month-long intensive investigation led to the arrest of 3 subjects. In May 2017, a fight took place when 2 groups of teens began arguing inside an Ajax restaurant. The altercation escalated outside, and the 3 teens from Ajax wound up suffering serious stab wounds that sent them to the hospital. 3 were charged in connection with this event. This past March, we had one of the busiest operational weeks in the history of our police service. You will recall that our police service arrested 2 of 3 perpetrators after an extensive ground search by almost 80 officers after the suspects committed a bank robbery in Clarington. And this morning on our regional conference call that we have with all of our regional teams and investigative units, the head of our robbery unit announced that one of the subjects that was arrested was just sentenced to a year plus in custody, if I'm not mistaken. During the same week, Chrissy, Roy, and Vanna were all killed in their Ajax home. 2 of the victims died of sharp force trauma, and the third was asphyxiated. Corey Fenn of Ajax has been charged with 3 counts of second-degree murder. Despite the often sensational nature of specific violent offenses and the obvious reaction from residents and the media alike, violent crime in the town of Ajax has remained fairly stable, with the average of 578 offenses reported annually. You see on the illustrated graph there that pie chart, 15% of all violent offenses in Durham region are committed in Ajax. Sorry, I can't see it from the back here, but you can see some of the data on that, the charts. But you'll see the bar graph where you can see that there is not a whole lot of fluctuation between the years. Each of the bars represents the years. The first bar on the left-hand side being 2013 and the last bar being 2017. The frequency of violent crime per 1,000 persons is 4.9. This slide outlines the comparison between Durham region, Toronto, Ontario, and Canada. And so you can see that this is a fairly favorable statistic when you look at the regional statistics and then move out from there. In terms of violent crime clearance rate, it's slightly higher than the regional average, and this is a positive indicator. Clearance rates for us is for every offense that occurs, what percentage of those crimes are solved. And in our case here in Ajax, just over 72% of all crime results in a successful outcome in terms of solving. This slide outlines the year-over-year overview of the number of robbery and assault incidents reported in Ajax. There were significant declines in the number of robberies in 2014 and 15. However, there has been a sustained increase in this area, which began in 2016, which is the uptick in terms of crime that I alluded to at the beginning of the presentation. The number of reports increased, number of reported assaults increased in 2015, and they have remained fairly stable in subsequent years. This slide shows the decline in street-level robberies, which was an area of investigative focus for our division over the past 10 years, based on the disproportionate number of occurrences when compared to other areas of Durham region. I'm sure in previous updates to this council, some of the highlights of those presentations have been what it is that we are doing to address the issue of street level robberies. We're pleased to indicate that in 2015, there was a record decline in these incidents. However, this crime category is now edging upward. There's been little fluctuation in the number of sexual violations reported in the town of Ajax. We are monitoring the impact of the Me Too movement as it relates to sexual offenses. However, as it's already been indicated, typically sexual violations are generally underreported. In relation to gun violence, which is obviously topical, in March of 2016, we began to specifically track the discharge of firearm occurrences. And without reading each report, these are difficult to identify in our records management system because the discharge firearm code is inconsistently used, and a shooting can be classified as in a number of different ways in our system. For instance, you could put a shooting in as a murder, an attempted murder, which is essentially the charges that are being laid against the subjects from last week, aggravated assault. So from the information that we have, we can report that there have been 6 shootings in the town of Ajax so far this year, which compares to 5 shootings at the same time last year. But in comparison, there were 6 shootings in Ajax in all of 2017. So if the trend continues, we'll probably surpass that statistic. Our roadway safety strategy has established an incremental approach to the improvement of roadway safety. Our vision and commitment is decidedly long-term. Our objective is to effect a reduction in motor vehicle collisions in Ajax to ensure that there's a reduction in instances where distracted driving or impaired driving is a factor in motor vehicle collision. This slide outlines the number of motor vehicle collisions in the town of Ajax, and they're broken down between personal injury accidents, property damage accidents, and fatal motor vehicle collisions. In 2017, approximately 14% of all motor vehicle collisions in the region occurred in Ajax. And if you look at the statistics on the slide, over the last 5 years, the number of fatal collisions, which is obviously the most serious, have fluctuated only just slightly. 3 fatal collisions in 2013, 3 in 2014, increased to 4 in 2015, but the last 2 years have been stable at 2 per year. This chart outlines the number of pedestrian and cyclist involved collisions, because I know there is a strong emphasis in Ajax specifically on finding alternate methods of moving around our community. And so hopefully this will illustrate the number of pedestrian and cyclist motor vehicle collisions. And when you look at the cyclist collisions, they're ranging anywhere. The high is 13 in 2014, and last year it was at 12. There are a few more pedestrian-related motor vehicle collisions, and obviously there's quite a fluctuation from year to year. This slide outlines our impaired-related violations from year to year, and in our next presentation, we'll probably be highlighting the impact of distracted driving now that we have more data based on, because that has become the primary cause of collisions, surpassed even impaired driving. Now, we'll probably also have to look at the impact of cannabis as well on as a factor in terms of impaired driving, and that may also take over from impaired by alcohol related violations. Investigating property crimes is truly a challenge. So a significant amount of our effort is spent on preventing residents from being victimized because of how difficult it is to investigate property crimes. As was alluded to, I think it was by Councillor Dyes, about the number of neighborhood watch communities in Ajax. The slide specifically outlines that 25% of all active watches in Durham Region are in Ajax. And from my perspective, this speaks to the engagement of residents and the relationship they have with, they've established with the town. So the 5-year trend has seen a steady increase in the reported property crime occurrences. With the noted exception of last year, there was a slight decrease. When we do the comparison in terms of the frequency of property crime per 1,000 persons, that is 16.1. This slide also compares, draws the comparison between other areas in Durham Region, Toronto, Ontario, and Canada. And you can see that we rank favorably in that area. This slide outlines the number of reported break-and enters over the last 5 years. There has been some fluctuation in this crime category. Again, a lot of the prevention efforts that we engage in do have an impact on, at times, on the victimization rate in terms of residential break-and enters. The top chart talks about all break-and enters, including commercial and industrial, and then the bottom chart outlines the residential break-and enter rate, which directly affects our residents. It's said that someone who experiences a residential break and enter, that the feeling of intrusion and violation will often cause people to move. So this is an important factor in terms of trying to protect our residents. And certainly the engagement by our residents in programs like Neighborhood Watch tend to bring communities together and allow people to communicate, so that if there's something unusual that they observe in their neighborhood, that there's a method to communicate that more broadly. We're looking at strategies to capitalize on the engagement by these Neighborhood Watch organizations to try and circulate information about things that are happening in their community, so that it truly is an integrated approach. This slide outlines the steady increase in reported fraud and identity theft, which I'm sure is of no surprise to anyone. Certainly technology is more frequently an element of these offenses now. And then theft of motor vehicles, that's car thefts and other large vehicles, have fluctuated over the last 5 years. We've certainly engaged in a number of projects to try and identify those people who steal cars. And then in this slide here, we depict the theft from motor vehicle is a nuisance crime. It's often unreported. This crime can be influenced by crime prevention efforts also. We have completed a number of Lock It or Lose It campaigns over the last few years, and it's our research and analysis has indicated that when we do these campaigns, there is generally, for at least the preceding months, if not year, a corresponding decrease in the victimization rate in that particular community. So it does work when people are reminded about locking their vehicles and removing any valuables and any other crime prevention tips that are offered when we go door to door and engage with the community. Overall, our property crime clearance rate is 21.8%, which regrettably lags behind the regional average of 26%. We're working on this, but resources are a factor in this. When we focus many of our diminished resource capacity on some of the more severe and serious crimes, such as shootings and stabbings and the homicide investigations and bank robberies and other things alike, which involve a project-focused type investigative approach, it affects our ability to prioritize these types of investigations, although it is a priority to us. So this is an area where I hope that in our next update that we're able to show that we've come up with a strategy to improve this statistic. One of the things I'm particularly excited about in terms of our overall organization is that we have established a new diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan as an organization, which cascades to our division, which is most notably probably the most diverse community in Durham Region to police. So these factors in this document become particularly relevant. And this plan was put together with the assistance of 3 experts, most specifically Mr. Trevor Wilson, who is an author and an expert in this area. This document is a 107-page document that sets out clear goals and identifies measures and success indicators. What I particularly like about the document is it does complement a lot of the work that is being done here in Ajax, so that it seamlessly integrates into the work of our partners going forward. And it builds on some of the strategic plans that we've had in the past. And the focus of this plan here is certainly the execution of the plan is always the most challenging piece. I'm not saying that we're not facing our own challenges, but our goal is obviously to reflect the communities that we serve and to provide service to an engaged community. I use the term a wraparound service. We need to be able to provide that wraparound service to our residents. And hopefully, by some of these principles in this plan, we're able to do that. I've added this slide here because it gives an overview of 2 of our marquee programs. One being the School Resource Officer Program, which operates out of J. Clark and Notre Dame, and there are 2 feeder elementary schools that are included in that project. That could be its own presentation to talk about some of the successes at that school campus. And I'm not going to get into it here unless there are some specific questions, but I just wanted to highlight that despite all of the crime fighting and investigative initiatives that we have underway, that there are a number of proactive initiatives that we have established in partnership with many community stakeholders. The second is the Colors Youth Group, which has been operating for a number of different years as well, right here in Ajax. And I can tell you that we ran the same program last week, last Thursday. You there, Chris? No. But we have a number of officers that stop in to the monthly youth group that's hosted by our service, involving the LGBTQ youth within the community. And over the years, we've seen the numbers in that youth program grows exponentially. And a lot of the youth do enjoy the different presentations that are made and some of the activities that are engaged with at this youth program, and it certainly is one of the things that we would consider a strong success story in terms of programming. And just to wrap up before we get into any questions that you may have for us, I'm sure it's no secret to anybody that we've engaged in a body-worn camera pilot project, and West Division, which encompasses Ajax and Pickering. We have 2 platoons of officers who are outfitted with body-worn cameras. Now, we did a lot of the research and background work over the last 2 years. The project went live in June, late June, and so we're into the 3rd month where officers are field testing the use of body-worn cameras as a way to, and the impact on their ability to do their job, engage with the community, use this as a way of collecting evidence, and it certainly is a modern tool that is being tested in many other police environments to build on the trust and confidence factor as it relates to the legitimacy of policing. So I brought, and this is an actual camera. It hasn't been on the whole time, so just so you but I thought I would let people kind of handle it, because I don't know if you've had the opportunity to do that, but each one of our officers have this on their vest. They turn it on and off when they're engaging with the community. We have 2 platoons that have it on, 2 platoons that don't. We'll be doing a lot of, asking for a lot of feedback from the community on their impressions of this over the next few months to evaluate their use, because certainly staying legitimate in the eyes of the public is one of our primary concerns. That's the way we can accomplish things more effectively. So if you want to pass it around, and then while it's being passed around and you look at it, are there any questions that I might be able to answer? I covered kind of a cross-section of things. I'm sure that each one of you may have a specific concern or suggestion for improvement in terms of the service that we offer. The only other thing I wanted to say before I open the floor to questions is that you've received our the second of a monthly update that we plan to disseminate every month to members of council, so that you have a first-hand understanding of the things that happened in the month previous, so that when you're engaging with residents, you are speaking from a position where you can be informed of the work that's being done right here in your community. It's just another method that we want to use to improve our communication. I'm happy to have the gentleman that usually assembles this here. I also am remiss if I didn't introduce Sergeant Dave Palmer, who's in the back. He is the Community Resource Unit Sergeant. And these 2 guys, when you are asking about trends in specific neighborhoods, the first person we turn to is Chris, to say, Chris, tell us if this is a real issue. And then when you are asking us to solve a particular problem that is complex and requires a specific response, or nobody knows how to fix the problem, we turn to Dave and his team. So certainly at the end of this presentation, if you want to communicate with them and get some business contact information, I would encourage you to do so that you have that direct line of communication. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I will say that your monthly reports have been refreshing and really, really important for us to have as a council, so thank you for that. Regional Councillor Collier.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Inspector Haskins, and Jeff, thank you very much for your presentation, as well as the monthly newsletters and this presentation today. It's great to be kept informed on a regular basis and to be proactive, so I appreciate that very much. I wonder if you could provide council with a copy of the presentation today.
Of course. Yeah, I think they already have. It's already been sent to Legislative Services.
Okay. As well as the Diversity and Equity Inclusion Plan. Could we get
Yeah,
that
I can
as well?
send you an e-copy of that
Yeah,
document if you'd like.
that's fine.
That's no problem.
Prefer e-copy.
Yeah,
Thank you.
because it is pretty thick.
I think, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say all of us have been knocking on a lot of doors lately and talking to a lot of residents, and definitely the perception is that crime has increased, and you outlined a number of the reasons why that perception exists, a lot of the things that have happened, and then you also said the regionally violent crime has gone up 7.4%. So I'm being asked a lot of different questions, and I guess I'm wondering what are DRPS or Durham West specifically, I guess, doing to be proactive in Ajax? What can be done, and what are you doing to be proactive as far as the chain of events we've had in the last short time?
So depending on which area that you focus on, naturally, we do have, if you talk about roadway safety, we have a number of initiatives that are programs that run year after year, and we enhance those programs from concerns that are brought forward by residents about speeding on their streets, stop sign running, that type of thing. We have a roadway safety steering committee that is comprised of a member of the town of Ajax, a member of the city of Pickering, Road Watch, and the member of the region, and our regional enforcement team, traffic enforcement team as well. We meet about every 2 months to talk about issues of concern. So if there's a traffic issue that has a road engineering issue, or it's a duplicate complaint that's been made to the region or to the town, there's a way to communicate that. In terms of property crime, we have a number of initiatives that are planned, and we have done a number of initiatives where we go door to door, which are neighborhood exercises, where we go and knock on doors and inform members about the different issues that are happening within their community, to try and have some impact on the residential property crime rate. We also have a number of other programs that are underway, including the ones that I've mentioned, but our Durham Connect table is one where we can refer members of our community who are experiencing acutely elevated risk. So we continually go back to their homes or what have you, or they find themselves in a position where they are in crisis. The Durham Connect table is a table where there are multiple services available at the table, where we try and problem solve to provide this individual or persons with some options. In terms of violent crime, overall, we're certainly seeing that uptick, and certainly things are playing out in our 24-hour news cycle that is unrelenting. Certainly our strategy to address those issues are going to be discussed more comprehensively as we see specific trends in terms of what appears to be an increase in the number of incidences where a firearm is used in the commission of an offense. But as I've alluded to, that trend seems to be moving in the right direction, or not in the right direction, but moving upward. But it's hard to say what is specifically influencing that trend at this point. So more globally, we're a downstream agency, so we react to these situations. I can be brutally honest with you that it is stretching our resources to be able to keep pace with trying to solve all of the serious crimes that have been happening. In fact, the investigative teams are working around the clock. When one incident happens, they get it solved, and then the next one happens, and with very little reprieve. So what we are seeing is a decrease in our ability to focus on the things that happen where you are the victim of fraud, while the workflow in our investigative units is being exclusively focused on the serious stuff and the very serious stuff, because in my opinion every crime is serious, but the other things that don't require an immediate response because nobody's in immediate danger are being left to lag. So I'm not trying to lower expectations, but I'm just trying to be realistic that we have a growing community. Our resources have not reflected the change in the increase in the region over the last little while. Although a few years ago we prioritized as a service the construction of a number of facilities to meet the needs of today, but also into the future. And so naturally, because of the way that we finance some of the infrastructure for the region, it gets added to our global police budget. And then there's one taxpayer, so there's not an appetite to not only increase our staffing to meet the changing nature of harm and the growing population, as well as finance large infrastructure projects. So with that, it's quite complicated, and there's a delicate balance. So we are doing as much as we possibly can to ensure that we remain a safe community, and I just want to highlight this. We are a very safe community. And I think the statistics do reflect that when you compare ourselves elsewhere. So I don't want people to lose sight of that fact, even though what at the beginning part of this presentation I highlighted some of the more serious things that we've dealt with.
Thank you for that. You talked about about growth, and I think, I'm trying to remember, I think it's 871 officers or something like that is the police force, whatever it is, close to that.
876 is our.
876,
right
and
now.
it's remained like that for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the region of Durham has grown by 150,000 people or so. So the ratio of officers to residents has continued to go, I guess, up all that time. Is that up or down? Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah,
More people per officer. And, you know, that is part of the issue. I mean, are you able to tell us how many officers we have patrolling Ajax streets on an average day?
So our deployment model is such that we have 25 officers per platoon. We have 4 of them. So we have 100 frontline officers. We have 5 officers in our target team, 22 officers in our investigative team. We have 4 officers in schools, 2 traffic coordinators, and then all the supervision that goes with that. So in each platoon, there are 2 sergeants and a staff sergeant. And then I would trade 3 officers for another Chris, because Chris provides us with organizational focus. Chris is our crime analyst. And then we also have 8 civilian members at the division that support all our overall efforts. So that totals, you probably you're writing it down, it should total about 158 members that work at this division. On an average day, we have minimum staffing. So in Ajax and Pickering, our minimum staffing is to have 10 frontline officers out on the road.
In Ajax and Pickering?
For Ajax and Pickering. And our minimum staffing on night shift is about 15. That's minimum staffing. Quite often we are running at minimum staffing just simply because there are a number of different influences that impact how many officers we can deploy. But we try and work well above that whenever possible.
Okay. I understand the numbers, and there's arguments, you know, whether we need a station, whether we need more officers, whether I think we need both. But how do we do that given the budget constraints? But I don't want to get into that political side here. One other thing that we talked about, and with the police, with the cameras and technology, I absolutely agree with embracing technology, and we brought forward motions with regards to unmanned speed enforcement and red light cameras in the town and the region. And I think those are going to start taking place next year, hopefully. How do you feel that will help the RPS addressing some of the issues?
Well, in terms of being able to provide a consistent response, especially when you use technology as it relates to enforcement, there is provisions within the Highway Traffic Act for municipalities to engage in the use of speed enforcement that's used through technology, because when we do that, we don't have to send an officer out. Sending an officer out to a situation is the most expensive way to try and resolve the problem. And usually what happens is the behavior changes while the officer's there, but once the officer leaves, the behavior returns to normal. Now, given the complex nature of our transportation network, and especially in Ajax, when you've got 4 and 6, in some cases in 8 lanes, when you include bike lanes in multiple different directions, it becomes really challenging to do red light running enforcement and things of that nature. So certainly technology will alleviate the requirement for us to use officers. A combination of both seems to me would be the most successful way to address some of the challenges that we have. But we're going to have to be smarter with the way that we deploy our members. And that technology would certainly augment that, in my opinion. And I know that there was a study done by the region. In fact, that study was initiated because of work that we did at West Division probably about 4 years ago, when we put it directly in our roadway safety plan. And that garnered the attention of the region. And then the region themselves hired a consultant, as all the regional councillors here know. And then when it went to determining whether that it was feasible to implement one right across Durham Region, Regional Council deferred that, in my opinion, down the road. And I understand the reasons why. To put a red light camera program into place in Durham Region currently, it would require you to have enough cameras so that it changes driver behavior. If you only have one camera in Ajax or two, it doesn't have the desired effect of changing the behavior of drivers so that they consciously stop for red lights. So if they're so spread out, it has no impact. So some of the more successful programs in the province have a much denser community profile than ours because we're a big geographic area. So those are some of the complications. Hopefully that's answered your question.
Okay. And just, yeah, that's fine. And what can we do as a municipality to help DRPS, like to advise our residents to make your job easier and make the community safer? Is there anything the town can do as far as partnering with DRPS?
Certainly, and I know that we've explored a number of these things, that we don't have the answer to all the issues. Like I said, we're a downstream agency. Usually what happens is when people don't know who to call or don't know how to solve a particular issue, they call us and then we try and problem solve that. But collaboration is obviously the future, and certainly Bill 175 speaks directly to that in terms of our ability to integrate services together. So the more that we get together and do this and talk about what the concerns are, the easier it is for us to provide a specific service that meets the expectations of the residents, but not only meeting the expectations, it meets the expectations of the residents themselves, right? Like we are sometimes think that we've got it right, and the perception is that we don't. And so the closer we can align those two, the better off we all are, because this is a growing community. But Ajax has something unique that many, and I'm proud to say that because I work here, but it's engaged, and so the community wants to be part of an effort to keep their community safe. We need to capitalize on that. If there's a way that, especially, and I've already alluded to, that we can connect our neighborhood watches and modernize them through technology so that they can communicate more seamlessly, even better. Crowdsourcing, if you've seen any of that stuff, it works wonders when we're trying to solve problems. The use of CCTV camera systems, when you see crime happening in other areas of the world, and I'll specifically refer to like London, England, the Met, and they have a terrorist event, and then you see hours later that they're solving the crime, it's usually because they've leveraged technology to assist with that. And so I know that when you start looking at the security issues relating to the town, I would encourage you to strongly look at what ways there are to create safety, because I'm sure certainly we want to increase our overall strength as a police service to meet the demands, but that's the most expensive way to solve community problems, because human resources are costly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Councilor Drew?
Thank you. It's been great. I appreciate you coming here today and giving us all this information. It certainly changes some perceptions, and I wish we could somehow get this information out in front of more people. Obviously, we are a safe community, but we still can improve it, and I appreciate that. Your crime analyst, what more could you do if you had more crime analysts? What would it assist you in doing?
Well,
Go ahead, Chris. This is your opportunity.
You wouldn't have to work 24/7.
I think it would just be a matter of doing more of what is currently done and in a much more timely manner. So right now, the role is pretty diversified. We support, obviously, administration, as well as strategic planning. So identifying process measures and outcome measures in order to evaluate our progress, what's working, what's not working, where we can improve. As well as a large amount of my time is spent on investigative support, so supporting our criminal investigative branch as well as roadway safety. So it's pretty diversified, and it requires a lot of triage in that respect. So regrettably, some stuff will take, or some requests will take, much longer than perhaps I would like to see for them to get done. So I think if there were more crime analysts, we would just become more efficient in that sense.
And would it assist you in deploying your resources more effectively?
100%. 100%. Because no longer do we have the luxury of you, as a counselor, receive a complaint from a resident about something that's happening, and I'll use speeding because that is truly one of the largest numbers of complaints that we get from residents. Well, our system now is that we go out and validate the complaint before we ever send out an officer to do enforcement. And some of the technology that's available, for instance, the speed boards. Speed boards not only act as a way to suggest to the residents to slow down so that they know what speed they're going, it collects the data of all the vehicles flowing through that area or that street. And so we could usually put a speed board out. The town has similar equipment. And it collects about 2 weeks worth of data so that we know what the highest speeds are at the time of day. Based on that now, if we were able to use, the speed boards do provide some analysis work, but then we decide, okay, well, the problem exists between 7 and 9 in the morning, which is right the line for the rush hour, so we're going to assign our traffic officer to that time frame. I know that they have a very interesting pilot project, I don't know if it's part of a program in Pickering, where neighborhood associations have partnered and purchased these speed board devices where the neighborhood association can actually access the information as well, so that the community itself has access to the data that they're producing. What it's helping us do is showcase that quite often people have speeding complaints that don't exist because traveling at 50 kilometers an hour in a residential area may seem fast when there's kids out playing, but the reality is there is no speeding complaint, or the average person is doing 2 or 3 kilometers over the limit. In most cases, we find they're under the limit. So it helps us assign resources at the right time because we just don't have resources to assign to every concern because we have thousands of complaints, and we now use a system to prioritize which ones we attend and the ones that we don't attend. And we're able to justify that to the residents usually now.
Great. The community response resort, I think that was the right name. Can you just explain a little bit more about, or give an example how that might work?
So if you have a community issues, and I'm going to use perhaps maybe a neighbor dispute situation where it happens repeatedly and you need to have a single point of contact, and we want to get to the root cause of the issue. And we also want to problem solve this particular problem in cooperation with the town, whether it's property standards, whether it's there's a health-related issue, noise-related issues. We usually assign that to the community response unit because they can dedicate their services to solving the problem so that hopefully goes away. They have experts that deal with the relationship with our licensed establishments in Ajax, and they do so in cooperation with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. I don't think Ajax has that, but some of the premises that cater or provide body rubs, strip clubs, that kind of thing. We need to have an ongoing relationship with those venues because quite often there's a risk, especially in those types of venues, of human trafficking and other related issues. And there's also some health-related concerns. When it comes to, they deal with a lot of Crime Stoppers tips about venues that might be meth labs, marijuana grow-ops, other things. That team looks at all of those things. Not only that, they are the ones that go out and do roadway safety enforcement en masse. So if you see a big project happening, usually it's that team that deals with those specific issues. So they are pulled in every different direction that we have. Feel free to use them any which way you like.
Now that I know that they're
Now that you know that they're there. Right, Dave?
ask a question about cannabis or?
Sure. Sure, I don't know that I'm gonna be able to answer it,
Well,
because there's so
just-
many questions, but,
I know, and that's the whole concern, that there are a lot of unanswered questions, and I watched a panel from AMO talking about it, and so many concerns, and from the policing aspect as well, that private retailers, it's easier for organized crime to infiltrate. Is that a concern amongst
yeah, you know, that.
police organizations?
Certainly, the chief and I were together on Friday, and we had a long discussion, he and I privately, about cannabis and the challenges that we're going to face. Not as a community. This is not a policing issue, because this is going to be a regulated business. This is a change in society, not unlike when before Prohibition, where the alcohol was not permitted. We are now kind of moving in that direction with cannabis. So it's really unknown what the impact will be, but you know, having a strong regulatory framework and an incremental implementation period would certainly allow every agency to adjust to the impact that this is going to have. So it's really difficult to be able to specifically speak to this issue, because we don't know what the regulations are going to be. I know that municipalities have the opportunity to opt in or opt out. So at this point, we are doing as much to try and prepare for it as everybody else is, but we're also looking to answer as many unknown questions as I'm sure you all have.
Yeah, and is there any, I mean, that was what certainly came across as a long list of questions and no answers yet. Has there been an indication at all as to when those answers might be forthcoming? I know our staff are following it, and I'm just asking, you know, if you have
Not
any
really.
information.
You know, I know the chief was with former Chief Blair, now MP Blair, recently, and I know that the chief's comment to Bill Blair at that time was, you know, we can't keep alcohol and tobacco out of the hands of young people. How is this system without any regulation going to keep cannabis? And it's the cannabis concentrate that becomes the real challenging piece to detect and figure out how to not regulate, but there are so many unknowns. So the short answer to your question is we are in the dark as much as you are.
And as far as a testing like a breathalyzer, I've heard, you know, different comments that there isn't really.
I know that progress is being made in that area, but I am not sure exactly the status of that at this point. So we certainly would love something as definitive as a breathalyzer for cannabis or other things, but we may not have that luxury. So.
It's a concern. Well, lots of information. I like the diversity inclusion.
Yeah.
Was that based on, we saw the diversity census, I think you brought it to our diversity and community engagement committee, so that.
So the census information that we have of our organization was produced by the Center for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, or Canadian Center for CCDI. I think you've engaged in the same system right now.
We're a partner organization
Yeah,
with
that's
CDI,
right.
and they're exploring options in the census.
Yeah, so we did that a few years ago, and then we bought into the dynamic component of that, so that we can continually upgrade our progress when it comes to who works for our service. But I can certainly provide you with an e-copy of the diversity strategy, because one of the objectives within that strategy was to make sure that we had data around who we are as an organization. We have over 1,200 members. We're quite diverse, but in terms of our those who identify as unrepresented underrepresented or visible minorities, as the term used to be referred to, we hover around at about 8%. But I'm happy to say that about 22% of our division, it has a diverse background. So we are the most diverse division, policing the most diverse community in Durham region.
And that's good.
That's an excellent thing.
But you still need to go further.
We do need to improve that.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was good information. Thank you to the analyst and the resource program responsibility.
Councillor Brown? Sorry. Too loud?
Thank you. Thank you for confirming about the speeding, good, because that's what I hear all the time, complaints about speeding through their, whatever, their street or subdivision. And I always say to them, like, well, it's your neighbors that are doing this. They're not people coming from Toronto to speed on your street.
That's true.
And so speak to your neighbors when you can. But what you're saying is if we have more speed boards, it might help DRPS.
So we have, Roadwatch just purchased a second one. So there's one for Ajax, one for Pickering. But I know that both municipalities have their own equipment to do
Yes.
this type of work as well. And I know that there is a good system that has been established to feed each of the partner agencies with the information from the speed board data.
Yeah.
So the key is that we all work together on these things. I hate to tell you that Gord Fleming, who is the traffic safety coordinator, who is
Don't say it.
another outstanding
Another rock
officer,
star.
Don't say it.
is retiring.
Oh.
So I spoke with my boss today, and I said, I'd like to post a position right now to replace Gord so that they can work with Gord, because
Yes.
the moment that he leaves and there's a corresponding drop in service, my phone will go off the hook. I said, so because of that, and so will Dave's, because Dave's his boss, so really.
So Dave, how many speed boards do we have? Do we know?
I know we have one for sure. We just purchased a
No, I
second,
mean
right?
the town of Ajax.
We just have, I believe it's just 2 right now.
Yeah, see, I think if we can collect this data, it will help. And we should put more, a couple more in the budget next year.
What you should maybe do is look at, it may be too early to determine the success of the Pickering project, but they're buying them in cooperation with neighborhood associations. And so the community then feels part of it, because it's not information that's just being coveted and kept secret by the municipality. They can log in and see that issue in real time. Like, I can tell you what speeds were on a specific street in the last 15 minutes
Really?
by logging into that data. So technology is really going to help us going forward. Hopefully reduce the number of complaints that we have too.
And certainly the community participation.
It really helps,
Yes,
yeah.
thank you. Also, I'd like to speak about the proposed gun range that's coming to Ajax, possibly. I'd like your comments on that project. If you have any concerns or anything that's happens in other areas where there's gun ranges and.
You know, I don't have a lot of background as to the experience of a gun range and does it impact a community, other than when it relates to noise. Sometimes, depending on the site itself and the type of weapons that are permitted to be used in that gun range, it does have a corresponding impact on neighbors. In terms of it changing the safety of the community, I actually don't think there's anything safer than a gun range because of the regulations that go along with it. And those people that go there to use it as a sport, although I don't understand it. I understand that people do enjoy that. So from a policing perspective, we don't generally get too excited about a gun range per se, but having said that, we are quite willing to explore that. We just expect every business, like any business is, to be a good corporate citizen. And the moment that they prove otherwise is the moment that they will come into focus for us.
Thank you. And that's what I've heard, that it's the safest place because of the regulations around the gun range, but it's the location that they're concerned about. And this particular place happens to be next door to a McDonald's. And so there's a lot of, youth participation in the area. But all we can do as a municipality, I believe, is we can regulate where they can locate, because it's a business, it's a legal business, so we have to
That's right.
provide it. So that's what we did with the strip joints we put
In the industrial
in the
area.
industrial area, yeah. So all those years ago, but.
Strip joints?
See, the strip
Yes, we
club.
do, yeah, we do. But it's interesting, the police's thoughts on it. It's a safer place, but it's the location.
It's the location,
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation.
No problem.
Councillor Dies?
But just a follow-up question to that with the gun range. Are you able to track where, when there's gun violence, where the gun comes from? So maybe the owners, or may not be. And I think that's what part of the concern is in the community. It's a thin wedge in, you're opening up to, you know, the availability of guns. It's a large gun store on site. So I'm curious as to what kind of data you have on that information.
I'm going to refer to Dave, because Dave just,
You can come up here if you want, Dave.
was just transferred to our division. He was in our gun and gang unit, so for a number of years, and so he has firsthand knowledge.
So, let me just make sure I'm understanding the question. We're asking if we're able to track.
Where the guns come from,
Yes.
if they're not owned by the person perpetrating the crime, where are they coming from?
So, in regards to that question, there are two ways that a person not registered will come in possession of a firearm. And the first thing I should know that the long gun registry was cut off by the government, so we no longer track owners with long guns, shotguns, rifles, guns predominantly used for hunting. As far as the handguns, restricted firearms, stuff like that, we work in close cooperation with agencies from over the states in the U.S. And we do have a representative on our provincial weapons enforcement unit. And whenever, for example, if we in the Guns and Gang unit, any unit within the region, if they seize a firearm that's believed to be involved in crime, one of the Guns and Gang members will go to that place, go to that site, and process the firearm. And from there, we will notify our provincial weapons enforcement unit, and then they will start the background on that weapon. Typically by the serial number that's on it. So it's from, if it's manufactured and distributed in the US, we'll have that. They'll make contact with an American agency and follow up on it. For weapons where the serial number has been defaced, we'll go through our forensic unit, and we've been successful on some items to actually retrieve the serial number and then follow up from that.
So you would track any kind of break-ins where there was a theft in
Yes.
the home, where guns were being stored? And my understanding is that you have to keep your gun locked in the trunk of your car on the way to a range, say, and on the way home without any other stops in between. Who enforces that?
Well,
You're going to get that question.
so I'm not sure. We can enforce it as a police agency, but for the most part, there's no initiative that I'm aware of that we will go out and go enforce, make sure that gun owners that are arriving at a gun club are following the prescribed regulations
Right.
and are following the rules. I know if you're going to transport that firearm to a location, you need to have a certificate for transportation. But beyond that, there's no, I don't have anything that follows up on enforcement.
I guess it would only be an issue if you were caught
Yes.
stopping somewhere.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
So having it in your waistband when you're driving the car?
That's exactly.
Okay.
No, we know that.
So I just wanted to say, I actually made a point of attending, I think, just about every Road Watch committee meeting last year, or this year, well, last year and this year. And actually it was very informative. I quite not enjoyed it, but I mean, it was interesting because it's a much different, to get the perception of what's really going on out there versus residents' perception, the actual facts. And I happen to know that Ajax Road Watch spends much more time in Ajax than they do in Pickering. even though they are both divided services. For whatever reason, Ajax ends up with more of their time on our streets. And so they're a very valuable resource. And I heard a rumor that Gord might come back and just volunteer on that committee.
That's more than a rumor. We told him we wouldn't let him go until he signed a contract.
I know. He's so great. He just loves that. He's very passionate about safe streets. There's a theory out there that if we ban guns, society is safer. I know that's a difficult question to ask, but
It
what
is, and there's certainly a number of, given our proximity to the largest gun collection in the world, which is next door to us in terms of country, I don't know that that's realistic. Having said that, I know that there are a number of advocacy groups that are calling for the de-weaponization of the police. I'm not sure that's realistic either, given. But certainly gun regulations are a hot topic, obviously, since the spike in gun violence in Toronto specifically in this year. So I think the status quo is not sustainable as to where we are. How we as a society develop a strategy to deal with that. Like I said, downstream agency as the police, we enforce the framework, the legal framework of laws and try and address emerging issues. But this isn't a problem that we're going to be able to solve on our own.
Yeah.
So this is where we need that innovation to take root, I think, as a community, to preserve the good things. I'm not a hunter, so I don't know that that's a good thing, but nonetheless, but those that do. So we want to preserve all the things that are just and right, while trying to eliminate the things that are not. So it's really hard to answer that.
I know it is, and I appreciate you trying. Thank you. You're a very brave man to come here and talk to us about this. Any police officer? We were very good. I thought we were very good, but still.
Well, my hope is that you'll invite us back at least twice a year.
Oh, you can guarantee it.
I would say you're welcome.
Yeah, anytime.
To have this dialogue,
That's fun, yeah.
because I think it's really important. And as I think I've met with some of you over the last little while, and I would say to all of you that, you know what, our door is always open. We're happy to discuss any issues that are of concern to the residents, because I know that you speak on behalf of them. We want to get the concept of what we do for our community right. We want to meet everybody's expectations, and sometimes I hear of the stories where we've not met those expectations. So through these partnerships and communication, I think we can achieve that together. If there's things that you would like to know that you don't have access to, this is your guy right here. But I'm happy to try and provide that information as quickly as we can.
Well, I know I can't speak on behalf of everyone on council, but I know that for the last 4 years, we haven't seemed to have a lot of communication with police, and in the last little while, it has been like so incredible to be able to get an email response when we send you an email, or to get the report that you're sending out now. It has just been it's been a real breath of fresh air for me, and I'm sure that.
We try to do the same. We get the same constructive feedback from Pickering. Is that there was an absence or a void of information and what have you. So we're trying to restore that positive relationship between the services, because to me, what I characterize is that if there was a Town of Ajax Police Service, then naturally we would be sitting at this table providing an update, same as the fire chief and all the other department heads. And so ideally, I think this is an integral part of all of the things that we do as a community. So as much as I can participate in that process, I would like to. That's my philosophy. I can't speak to the people that may come after me or those that have come before me, but that's just my take on this. What I can tell you is I really want to represent the great work that is being done by the 158 people that are in West Division. They really are a dedicated group. The atmosphere there is positive. And I can't say that about all areas of the police service. I know that there's challenges out in our community right now, things that are impacting the level of engagement by our members. But what I can tell you is that we get the newest officers. We've got 7 new officers last week. It's started in our division, and that represents renewal. Many of these officers are coming with diverse backgrounds and incredible skills that only make the community better. 3 months before that, we got 7 new officers as well. I'm hoping in November, when we go to what we call our draft, where we have new experienced officers, I'm hoping to take the lion's share of those people to come to West Division as well, which keeps the atmosphere positive and engaged, which means that a happy member is an engaged, provides an engaged service to Ajax and Pickering. I know that's what you expect, but sometimes it's hard to keep that, sustain that effort. So.
And Jeff, we knew you were always doing a good job, but it's nice to be able to read about it.
Yeah, well,
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor
you.
Dice, just was, I think Councillor
Well,
Dice has one question.
And just to what you said, I think that the work that you do in a community is really, really time consuming. And it's a different kind of a job. And I think, in my opinion, that lag was, it was never properly funded. So, and just to give you an example of that was, and I haven't had an update in 4 years, but I think we have how many constables on bicycles that do patrols in the summertime?
Well, we struggle to put any out now. Only simply because we have moved from an organization where I have said that if we could have the balance between a 50-50 split, 50% responding to emergencies or people in crisis or situations, 50% of our time doing proactive initiatives and engage with community partners. Right now, I would say that our officers' discretionary time is quite limited. I would say 90% of their time is spent reacting, and the time that they do have that is discretionary isn't at the time where we can do proactive work. It's at like 2 o'clock in the morning, or between 2 and 6 in the
Well,
morning.
therein lies part of the challenge.
Right, so what
So I
happened?
mean, you know, those officers on bikes were amazing because they connected with the youth and built a rapport with the youth who grew up to respect you. When you're in a reactionary situation and there's tension, that respect is gone. And it's gone for the rest of your life.
That's why our youth
So
school
I think the
liaison program is
community
so
building
important.
part is huge and should be funded appropriately for officers who are particularly.
Well, those of you who are vying for
But,
elected office at the regional level,
There you go. I know it's a challenge, but. yeah.
Anyway, thank you for your hospitality and always.
Thank you.
We adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? Oh, any departmental updates? Or anybody have a departmental update? We don't do that anymore? Okay. See, it's been a lot. I did chair it like for 4 years ago. I chaired my last meeting. Okay. Yeah, 4 years, I think so. Motion to adjourn.
Done.
All in favor? All right.